Hey guys, what's up? So today we're talking about meditation. And this is coming from somebody who just did roughly about 3 hours of meditation today. Mom and the baby are supposed to be going around. So if you're, hi mama, you wanna come give me a hug and kiss before you go to bed?
Um, She wants you to put her down.
I just started live.
yeah.
Hey, you gotta go, mommy. Okay, I love you so much. Okay, you gotta get her, baby. All right, so we're talking tips for deeper meditation and dealing with a little one. It's a
Come on, baby.
it's a good example. Here,
Hi.
say hi, bye.
Hi.
I love you so much.
All right, let's lay down. Here.
I know, right here. Well, you gotta go to bed. I'll see you later. I love you so much. So when in the process of practicing meditation, I've and teaching meditation, because that's a lot of what I go into with like coaching clients is just getting them to start meditating. Um, a lot of people struggle with it, like a lot, and I'm no different. I struggle with it tons. I've been meditating. Jesus, I don't even, meditating for about the past 12 years. And getting super deep into it. Today alone, because today I'm working on the process of building myself back up, but today alone I did about 3 hours worth of meditation. Mind you, not like continuously, just 3 hours of cumulative meditations, like an hour here, 30 minutes here, maybe 45 minutes here, and then another 20-minute meditation. Um, so spaced out during the day, but there have been times um, like during my 12-year practice where I've had very long, intense sessions where I've gotten up to the point where I've done like 3 hour, 4 hour meditations straight. And that's the beauty of running an online business and doing freelance work, is you get to just basically shut yourself off if you want to for a whole day and just do long meditations. So that's been a super big benefit for me. So in the process of like learning it and building up my meditation practice, there are quite a few things that I've done. Hey, Constance. There are quite a few things that I've done that really have improved like the process of meditating and made it easier for me. And I want to share these with you guys so you guys have a little bit of an easier time actually going through and doing your own meditation. So if you actually have any questions related to meditation and like any problems that you personally have with meditation, please let me know. Jesus, you're funny. um, and actually, that I guess I could start there, Wayne, with Jesus. So I really do love studying languages, and no, you're fine, dude. You're fine. The longer I get the beard, the more biblical references I get. So I get Jesus, Moses. I've gotten Samson before, which is an interesting one. Um, but speaking of Jesus, I was studying the Aramaic teachings of Jesus. What's up, Julius? Um, I was studying the Aramaic teachings of Jesus, and when you remove Jesus from like his like native tongue, there are a lot of like references and knowledge that's lost. Like when you remove any of the Old Testament teachings from Hebrew, there's a lot of information that just is lost. It's kind of like taking a it's kind of like the equivalent of taking the Mona Lisa and then building the Mona Lisa, like redoing the Mona Lisa, but doing it in crayon. That's like the difference between the the Hebrew and Aramaic version of like old ancient text and the English version. Hebrew and Aramaic are like the old ancient teachings that look great. Okay, dude. Um. Oh gosh, dude. I appreciate all the comments. When when comparing it to English, English is basically like the crayon drawing. It's good and it gives you a close approximation, but there's so many details that are left out if you're not looking at the original paintings or the original works of art. Okay. I don't speak them fluently, but I have studied the other languages. I have studied Aramaic. I have studied a bit of Hebrew and Greek as well. The ones that I found like the most information that's been super helpful is definitely in Aramaic and Hebrew. What's up, man? What's up, Rinsler? Yeah, you're another Ryan, man. Thank you. I'm glad you love the videos. So one of the things that I learned from the Aramaic teachings of Jesus is when Jesus actually referred to what was translated into the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, the term spirit itself comes from the Greek concept of spiritos. So our concept of spirit actually comes from a completely separate culture, which wasn't what, Jesus was referring to. When Jesus spoke and talked about the Holy Spirit, the actual term he used was ruha, or the breath. It was a feminine term. So whenever Jesus referred to connecting with the Holy Spirit, what he was actually saying was connecting with the breath. So when we talk about meditation, understand that if you're somebody who comes from a Christian background or an Abrahamic background, it's not non-Christian. That's actually what Jesus, the Nazarene, what that guy was talking about when he was walking around. He was like, hey, you want to connect? Connect with Ruha, the breath, this thing, the breath of life, the thing that gives us animation, that moves us. And through the act of connecting with the breath, we're given the opportunity to connect with our emotions. And this is what ultimately we're trying to do with most types of meditations is we're in the process of focusing back on the breath, back on the spirit, the thing that is intimately connected with our emotions. And if you've ever thought about your emotions and just like gone through a quick mental inventory of like different emotional states, you'll notice that there is a breathing pattern that's associated with it. If somebody is depressed, you already know how the person holds their body and they breathe. You can let me know in the chat. The person is usually arms slumped and their breathing is going to be slow and shallow. If a person is anxious and their energy is high, their breath might be very quick and belabored and like erratic, where it's like, as you get more scared, fear is associated with that kind of breathing pattern. And if you have a certain feeling, or like whether you're angry, you're anxious, or depressed, the one thing that you have the most control over to immediately, and I mean like immediately, shift out, yeah, it's a late night stream, to immediately shift out and to move into a better feeling state is to gain control and focus in on the breath. Like, how are you breathing? I need to lock this thing. Okay, let's get that locked in, because it keeps messing with me. Come on. There we go. Thank you for the the compliment on the beard. Yeah, if I'm talking about like one of the most helpful takeaways from the Bible, that one is one of the big ones. That one's been a very integral one that has really stayed with me, is that a lot of the biblical teachings that are very big is, number one, ruha, which is the Aramaic term which was referred to as the Holy Spirit, which is connecting to the breath. So whenever you hear Jesus referring to the Holy Spirit, usually he's saying, hey, connect back with the breath, the feminine breath, the thing that animates and connects us all. Connect back to that so you're able to understand what's going on. Hey, what's up, Michael? And just having that small bit really did help me with going deeper into my meditations, which I think is like one of the big tip that's often left out of the conversation. For people who have a Christian or a different religious background, the thought process or the belief related to meditation will often like stop us from keeping the practice consistently, where you think like, oh, this is something that's weird, this is something that is outside of my religion, outside of my beliefs, so if I practice it, is it going to like contradict what I believe or what I was programmed? And this actually operates for a lot of people, whether they're like currently religious or not. Like, if you were raised that way, that stuff operates inside of your subconscious mind, your programming, where you're going to, feel some type of way about practicing it. Like when it came to learning mantra meditations, and that's the reason why I got my Rudraska beads, my mala. The reason why I have that is because, oh, no problem, Michael. I'm glad that you guys are both here, you and your sister. Um, when I started the process of learning mantra meditation, one of the things that ended up happening was like I started wondering like whether or not this was going to contradict like old beliefs that I had related to Christianity, and that would like stop me from practicing it. Like I'll start doing it, see some results, and then get a little bit uncertain and have this like internal struggle within myself. So I found it very difficult to continue the practice of meditation, and that's one of the things that stops people from going deeper. One of the things that helped me get better at meditation and to get deeper into meditation to help with finding peace, joy, bliss, relaxation was just keeping a consistent practice. So number one is, of course, making sure that you have the right beliefs that allow you to practice this consistently, and then number two, practice it consistently. And it doesn't matter what meditation you do, because I've gone through dozens of different meditations. I've done Abraham Hicks guided meditations. Have done guided meditations on YouTube. I've done the Gateway Experience. I've done mantra meditation. I've done just regular breathing meditations. I've done meditations that I've gotten from small little pamphlets that a friend brought me from India, which is probably one of the most powerful meditations that I've ever gotten. And I might want to share that with you, because it's probably one of the most profound ones that I've ever experienced in terms of like how it affects the nervous system going through it. I'll answer your question in a moment, newbie noob music. The short answer is yes, it is capable of doing that. If you want to get deeper in meditation, there is the need and necessity for you to become dedicated in doing it. Meditation is like most other practices. If you want to get good at painting, you practice painting. If you want to get good at music, like playing the piano, you practice playing the piano. I play the ukulele. I played about 8 different instruments, but ukulele. And even though I played all those instruments, if I have, and I haven't really practiced all the instruments, the skill ends up like diminishing. Like I have the capacity to do it, but to build the neurological pathways and to make sure that I develop and get better at it, there needs to be a consistent practice. And the same goes for you. If you want to get deeper into meditation, if you want to learn how to visualize with much more clarity. Oh, it's one of the cats. If you want to visualize with more clarity, if you want to have deeper concentration and a deeper sense of peace and more presence when you're physically around other people, you need to dedicate yourself to this practice. And it doesn't mean doing like 2-3 hour meditations every day. It means just being dedicated to doing a certain amount of meditation every day, whether that's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just making sure that you do something consistently so that you get better at this practice over time. Even with Neville Goddard's state akin to sleep, or any other practices that you may learn, so many people have sadly the process of like bouncing from item to item, thing to thing, and I'm no different. I've done it before myself, where I've bounced from like methodology to methodology. But if you don't have something consistently that you practice and that you go deeper into, you don't experience the depth and the beauty of your consciousness and your ability to control not the world outside of you, but yourself, to control your own thoughts, to control your emotions, to control the images that you have in your mind and the sensations and feelings that you go through, so that you, when you go into the world, you go into the world with like a zest and an energy that you can use to create the life the way that you want. and this will lead into your question, newbie noob. When you're practicing, I believe that meditation or the concentration that's required for meditation is a fundamental skill that should be taught and practiced by most people. And when you do that, you can use it and apply it to whatever process that you want to do, whether it's reading a book or it's affirmations or anything else like that. You use it and it becomes no, no. Sadly, I don't do my streams in Spanish. I do understand Spanish, speak it. I speak just a bit, but I need to work on practicing it. So sadly, no Spanish. Yeah, Neville Goddard. So Helen, yeah, that's a good point. Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard wasn't super big on affirmations. That wasn't the core of his teachings. He did talk about them, and he did read the Bible, which ends up becoming affirmations. When you read them and go over them again and again, the things that I would say that would be the equivalent of affirmations for Neville Goddard is the feeling is the secret. That's one. Get into the end state or be in the wish fulfilled. Move into the state akin to sleep. That man is all imagination and God is the wonderful human imagination. Isn't it wonderful was one of the affirmations that he told people that he mentioned to people to use in their meditations or sat scenes. I like to refer to them as meditations because that's essentially what they are. It's cold enough to make my breath foggy. So for Neville Goddard and for other like occultists and other occult books that I've read, like the Arcane Teachings, which is a fabulous series. It's a two book series by William Walker Atkinson, who, if I'm not mistaken, was allegedly one of the people who may have been the author for the Kabbalion. But William Walker Atkinson wrote the Arcane Teachings and the Arcane Formulas, which are both two fabulous books. Very dense, though, so not something that I would suggest as like a beginner level reading. But what he talked about was the concept of mentalism, which is the core master key that helps people understand how any of the processes work. And meditation and concentration are like fundamental processes, because what you're doing is you're beginning to raise your level of awareness so you disassociate from the self or the everyday consciousness, so that you give yourself the ability to be flexible in what goes on in here, in between the eyes, well, in between the ears and behind the eyes. And when you have flexibility in what goes on in there, you have the ability to change, well, on a physical level, you are changing your energy, you are changing your mind, you are changing your mindset, and all of the systems that you learn are ultimately just different vocabulary words meant to describe the same process. You just gotta imagine what it is that you want to change in your life, and then impress it on the formless substance and just keep thinking about it until it crystallizes, not necessarily outside of yourself but inside of yourself. The structure in your nervous system has to solidify. Ooh. Oh, and hey, Daniel, your Marco Polo was hilarious, and you're welcome. You're welcome for the Marco Plus, man. Yeah, the visualization is real. Yes, that is correct. That is correct. It is real. And that's why I like and this is what happens when you start the process of meditation. When you start the process of meditation, you open yourself up to receive insights and information that doesn't necessarily come from the physical senses. And any person who has ever practiced or had a writing practice or a meditation practice can tell you there are certain points where you receive information where you do not understand where the source is from. And typically people will refer to this as creativity or the muse or like creative inspiration or the spark of inspiration, just like this new information that just sparks up inside of their head. And by having a practice of meditation, which a lot of things that we do, whether it's going on walks or writing, writing, or actual sit down, eyes closed, breathing meditation, it gives you the ability to open your consciousness and to open yourself up to receive new information, which is really cool. And once you start having those kinds of experiences, it's much easier to deepen your practice of meditation because you're like, whoa, that felt awesome, or like, whoa, that was amazing. I never thought of anything like that. That's like, when you blow your mind with thoughts that show up in your head and you have like these genius level insights, or you feel like obsessive bliss. Oh my gosh, once you have an experience like that, going into meditation is so much easier because it's a level of bliss that you knew was always possible. And the art and act of going back into meditation is like the sweetest fruit. I remember I was reading David Lynch's book Catching Big Fish. David Lynch is the director behind one of the Dune movies and a couple of strange, surreal works like Mulholland Drive, Twin Peaks, and what other weird stuff? Eraserhead. Those are like his big pieces. And he talked about his practice of transcendental meditation and how you use the mantra in transcendental meditation, and there's a sea of consciousness that you pour yourself into. He talked about his experiences of beginning transcendental meditation and understanding that as a creative, what we're doing is we're diving deeper into this infinite sea of consciousness so that we go into this and bring back more consciousness when we come to back to the physical world. We're diving deep into ourselves, diving deep into this space, and coming back with insights and more life to share with other people. It's like you're going fishing, you're going deep and bringing up the stuff from the depths, these treasures. And it's a beautiful, wonderful, blissful experience when you practice it. And it's hard to describe it to people when they've never experienced it themselves. It's like trying to explain the flavor of guayaba to somebody who's never had guayaba, and talking about the benefits of using meditation in your work, or in your creative life, or in your relationships, is as foreign to somebody who doesn't know the taste of guayaba as trying to explain. It's like trying to explain somebody who's never tried guayaba how delicious a guayaba and cheese pastry is with with a cortadito, or a little Cuban coffee and all that stuff, cafe con leche. You can try to describe it in words, but the person will never fully understand the experience until they go down to Miami and go to a little, like a little cafecito, a little cafe on the side of the road, and order themselves a guayaba and cafe con leche. That's the only way that they're going to be able to fully understand the experience. I can use words to try and teach you as much as possible, but the taste, the flavor, the texture, the full experience of being in that space where all the people are speaking Spanish and you can hear the cars driving outside and the smells, you can't fully understand and appreciate the warm, buttery, flaky experience until you've gone there and done it yourself. So the only hope that I have is by using these words that I incite enough like inspiration in you to go out and practice it yourself, so that you can go to that coffee shop of bliss and make an order with with the divine to experience what it's like. And when you have that kind of experience, it's just like drinking coffee and having that delicious pastry. You just have so much energy and vibrance throughout the day that people notice something's different about you. Like when I have a really good meditation, I can't contain my smile. I feel as though that there's this joy and passion for life that wells up inside of me, and I just can't hold it back, and I share it with everybody that's around, and people pick up on it. And there's an ease in the level of conversation, and anything that happens in life is just like brushes off you, because it's like it's no big deal. Who cares? Everything's amazing. Everything's wonderful. I'm good. And because I'm good, anything that comes around me, I can handle it and take care of it. It's a beautiful, beautiful experience. And I think it's extremely important for people to practice that before really going heavily into like Neville Goddard's SATS exercises. And I think it's actually extremely important because there are a lot of people who do struggle with SATs, like you. Newbie New Music is like you've well, actually, I don't know if you've struggled with it. I'm just, throwing stuff out there. But people that I've talked to who struggle with SATs, it's usually a reflection of just like how fractured attention and focus is now. Because we have so many different things that people could be consuming at any given time, it's extremely overwhelming. There's so freaking much things for people to consume. There's so, and matter of fact, I can't really say much because you guys you're on here on the live, but more than likely you got here by swiping on YouTube Shorts. There's so much content for YouTube Shorts. There's so much content that people are watching on TikTok for now, IG, Facebook, Reddit, or any other website that you just so happen to go on. There's so much content and information. We are in a flood of information where people's attentions are split so much. And when it comes to trying and working to focus and concentrate on something, to go from such a fractured like day-to-day life where your day is literally broken up into 30 seconds, 45 seconds to a minute of concentration. You try to do that, you're all day, it's just so many fast-paced movements that trying to shift gears and to go all the way from like 5 to gear 1 completely like blows out people's engines, because it's like, I gotta go do something, I gotta go do something, I gotta go do something, I gotta go do something. It's a lot. So trying to go immediately into a process like SATs with a mind that's constantly in the process of shifting and has that rhythm, which I never thought about that until now. Thoughts do have a rhythm. And if you consume a lot of social media content, the rhythm in your thoughts is a very fast rhythm, like in music, like a very fast BPM. And if you're trying to do meditation and you've never practiced a slower rhythm, it's very difficult in the beginning until you start practicing it. And that's why people who go and try to do manifestation processes and SATs, they try to go from 5th gear to 1st gear and then end up like blowing out their engines, because they're like, oh, every time I'm in there, it's like my mind is going from all these different images. I have this one thing that's coming, one thing that's coming, one thing that's coming, and then they'll become tired or bored or like frustrated, and then just give up the process. And that's why I think it's very important for people to just practice slowing down the mind by slowing down and focusing on something like the breath. And in that process, you begin to gain more control by slowing down the brain, not going automatically all the way to thinking of nothing, but slowing down the process, where instead of thinking of, in the course of, let's say, like a minute, instead of thinking of 300 things, so I don't want to say 300 things, instead of thinking of 30 things in the course of a minute, you bring it down to 15, to 10, to 2, and slow down instead of going from 30 thoughts to 0. Because what you'll notice is that as you begin meditating, yes, you will have thoughts. Like for me, when I started building up the practice of getting up to the point where I could do a meditation, one meditation sitting up to like over an hour in one sitting. Hey, what's up, Carla? Welcome. The way I was able to build that up was like I began
having the experience of all the like things that people usually experience and deal with and have problems with. I deal with it too. I would go through the same stuff. You got pains in the back? So did I, and so do I. Pains in the back, legs falling asleep, needing to move your shift your shoulders, feeling that creak in your neck, hearing sounds outside and away from you, and having that take away your attention, thinking about things that you need to get done, things related to work, relationship stuff that's on your mind, songs popping up in your head. All that stuff has happened to me too. But the process of meditation gives you the ability to sit there, to experience it, to be present with the thought, and to not put your attention on it, just to allow it to pass through the consciousness. The thought, if you just sit there for long enough and bring your focus from the thought back to your breath, you begin to relax and realize that the thought, when your attention is taken away, will just drift on by. And you remain. I really like that quote from Dune. Fear is the mind killer. I permit it to pass through me, and only I will remain. Same thing with thoughts. Understand that whatever emotion, whatever feeling, whatever experience is merely just a thought passing by, and it's not you. And by doing that process, the process of meditation is not just being in a thoughtless state. You're practicing meditation and strengthening it every single time that you're in that state. You're breathing, and your thoughts drift, and then you bring it back to what your focus is on. Either your breath, the AC, the sound of a fountain. Those are the things that I had to practice. Matter of fact, earlier today, this is what I did, and you could do it along with me. We'll do a real quick little meditation together. One of the things that I did was I just decided, you know what, I guess I'll do a meditation now, because I felt all these feelings, this anxiety and all this stuff that was coming up in my body. So I said, you know what, I'm going to sit down. And I sat, closed my eyes, put my hands on my lap, just, sat them there. I just started breathing. Started focusing in on my breath. So take a moment and just focus on your breath. Feel it moving in the nose and out. In the nose and out. Notice any feelings or sensations that you have in the body. You may feel energy or emotions. You might feel the seat that you're sitting on, toilet in some cases. You feel your body. You might feel some aches. Just sit with it. Continue to take your attention away from it and move it back to your breath, slowing it down. As your eyes are closed, you may notice images flowing through your awareness. After images of the space that you just saw when your eyes were not closed. And if you just take a moment and sit there and be. In that moment, you are no longer a human doing. For the first time in a long time, you're practicing being a human being. We're not human doings. We're not meant to always be in action. We are meant to be, to observe, And from the space of observing, we can create. So when you turn the attention inward with closed eyes, you withdraw your focus and move it into the darkness. When you leave the body to sit, we go from motion to stillness. And as you focus on the breath, slowly but surely, you begin to experience inner silence. And in that silence, in that stillness, in that darkness, as you breathe, you'll begin to feel an energy welling up inside your body that you can direct with your focus as it charges up. You may feel chills and goosebumps as this energy rises in the body. This feeling of peace, relaxation, joy. Sit with it. Breathe. Listening to the sound of my voice and the running water in the distance. Allow the energy to flow through your body, just like this water. There is nothing else but this flow, this motion. Take a moment and enjoy just being. And hear the phrase resonate in your mind. I am who I am, and that is enough. I am who I am, and that is enough. I am who I am, and that is enough. Take a deep breath in. Slowly return. How do you guys feel? For the people who took a moment and slowed down for a bit. Yeah, Newbie Noob is definitely not a passer. Yeah, definitely not. All right, yeah, so what did you guys think? I like those small little moments. They give us some time to, connect with ourselves and to become present with what is going on inside of ourselves.
because we're constantly trying to go from thing to thing. We're constantly trying to make more money, to go after the people that we want, to make them other people happy, to try and make ourselves happy, to acquire more in our lives, when ultimately all these things that we want, and also to make ourselves more healthy and to get our ideal bodies, but ultimately all of these things boil down to us wanting to get to the space of feeling fulfilled, being at peace, feeling content. And that's what most of, Eastern religions have been working to teach people, is just sit there. You don't need anything outside. Just go within and feel the feeling. You can experience that bliss. You can experience that joy. And then from that space, you have quite literally created all the things that you want. If you want love and desire love and passion, you can sit there and become the feeling of love. You can use your consciousness to create an image, and a scene that allows you to fully experience and immerse yourself in a scene of passion, where you and another person are staring into each other's eyes, and you tell them, I love you. You are the most amazing person in the world. And you have them say it back to you. You are everything that I have ever wanted. Where have you been all my life? And you can feel their hand caress your cheek. And in the act of doing that, you actually feel the hand and feel truly in love, drawn into another person, feeling that connection. You don't need anyone else or anything else to create that. If you know how to meditate, you can create that in the moment. That's what everybody's trying to teach you. That's what all of them are trying to teach. You don't need anything outside. Create it yourself. And when you do that, you need nothing and no one, and you become attractive. You become attractive because you embody that energy, so much so that people feel it when they're around you, because everybody is searching for those feelings. Everyone is searching for joy, fulfillment, for peace, for relaxation. They're all searching for it. And if you are somebody who just so happens to hold on to it, you are quite literally holding on to gold inside of your chest, and everybody wants a piece of it. And the beautiful thing about bliss and these feelings and emotions is that if you share it and you feel it, you will always have more. It's an infinite resource. When it comes to love or any of these positive, powerful emotions, you can continue to radiate and give it, and there's always more. You are like a sun in a world of dead planets. You just radiate this heat, this warmth, and people want to be around it. They're drawn to it just like the planets are drawn to the sun. They will orbit around you because they know that you don't need them. And they want to be like that too. Everybody does. To answer your question, Arjun, a tarot card reader or like a psychic, they get accurate reads on energy and thoughts of another person because they're people who have either through meditation or through not disconnecting from their abilities, they've maintained the spiritual senses. They've maintained the ability to pick up on spiritual senses that are in the field in the area. The easiest way to think of this is that, like right now, what we're doing is I'm speaking, the words are coming out of my mouth, the sound is projecting probably, I want to say like maybe a foot away from my mouth to the microphone. The microphone picks up the vibration of my voice, and that vibration is taken and converted into the Wi-Fi signal, and it's sent from my phone to the Wi-Fi router. Those signals, those vibrations are sent like with fiber optic cables all over the world to wherever the heck you happen to be. Those signals are broadcasted out of your Wi-Fi router to your device. Your device picks it up and translates that vibration into the image on your screen of me with my like curly hair in the blue and the lights in the background and my voice. And you hear it. You hear the vibrations. Your ears are picking up on the vibrations. Your ears are the
the physical apparatuses used to pick up this vibration and to translate that vibration into sound, into understanding. And it has to, you know, absorb it and like process it in your mind to fully understand what I'm saying. But ultimately, it's just you are receiving a vibration that your body is interpreting with sensory organs. People who are psychically tuned have basically cleaned out their psychic ears or whatever sensory or astral organs that they have so they can pick up on these more subtle vibrations. Because when you use your eyes, you're picking up on the vibrational range of light. When you pick up with your ears, you're picking up on the vibrational range for sound. When you pick up with your mouth, you pick up on the vibrational range of taste. With your nose, it's the vibrational range of smell. With touch, it's you know, the grosser, more the slowest, you know, forms of vibration there. But when it comes to higher energies with like people's thoughts or their emotions, that's what the, you know, tarot readers or psychics are picking up on. They're basically using subtler senses to pick up on vibrations that are emanating outside of us and around us. Because when we think, our thoughts, they exist in the physical universe, which is kind of like a funny thing to talk about, because I always find it funny that people who are like very scientific are like, no, my thoughts are mechanical. It's like, nah, your thoughts exist, which mean they have a physical component to it. If it has a physical component to it and your nervous system is literally moving energy, that means it's broadcasting the energy out. What is bone a strong enough insulator to stop vibration? No, it's not, because you could shoot like X-rays through the body, or like other high rates of vibration through the body. So vibrations can leave the body. So when you think a thought, those vibrations are moving out into the space around you. It's not contained inside of the head, it moves outside. And because it moves outside, anybody who's psychically tuned can pick up on those things that are happening. And this is where we also have psychic influence and mentalism. You can do one of two things with your brain and your nervous system. You could be a receiver for energy, which is what the psychic and the tarot reader is doing. They're a receiver. They're basically tuning into the energy and then they're converting it into sound. They're basically like, oh, this is a thought, this is an image, I'm going to share this with you and speak it to you. You can either be a receiver or you can be a transmitter, which is what I'm doing right now. I am taking my thoughts and I am transmitting them to you through speech. But you can also do that with your thought. That's ultimately what we do with other things like movies. We do it with books. Books are quite literally, articles or artifacts of telepathy. You take a thought, you impress it onto a page, which is a slice of a tree. You embed this sound into a slice of a tree, and somebody can come up by and look at it and hear sounds inside of their head. Your thoughts are quite literally like transmitted inside of other people's heads, which is like crazy. It's crazy to talk about, but it's like that's what we do every day. That's what reading is. Reading is telepathy, and it's wild, and it's like everyday magic. It's so common that people don't really think about like how outlandish that is, that you could literally have somebody who died hundreds of years ago and you pick up this piece of earth and you can hear their thoughts in your head. So people who have very powerful wills can project their thoughts out into the world and into the minds of other people. And ultimately, that's what speakers do, that's what writers do, and that's what influential people do, whether they know it or not, because they can project their thoughts without speaking it. You could just project the thought itself, which is also possible. And that's what we talk about when people are talking about doing like SATs, robotic affirmations, love letter methods, or any of that other stuff. The person is literally projecting the thought out to another person. Oh, I'm glad that you got your last minute shopping done, Carla. My attention is pretty narrow. Now my concern is examining how God removed and what are the effects of going against nature in the Bible and why meditation on the Bible is important. Okay.
Oh yeah, I haven't kept up with everybody's questions. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good, dude. Hello. Uh, what are my views on sleep guided meditations and affirmations? So they haven't really done much for you. Am I doing it wrong? Not necessarily. You might not be doing it wrong, Rinsler. It may be that you just haven't found the right one. And sometimes that's not even like the person that you're listening to and watching the guided meditations of, that they're not the best. It just may be that you haven't found the right one. Like, I've listened to tons of different sleep meditations and affirmation videos. I've listened to just straight affirmation ones. I've listened to subliminals, so it's outside of the realm of like conscious hearing. It's slightly higher, or slightly lower, or it's whispered. I've listened to ask formations where they ask you questions. I've listened to Neville Goddard before going to sleep and then doing my sats. I've done these a whole bunch of different processes. It's just a matter of practicing and figuring out which one works for you. Like I like Elmore Locker Jr.'s guided meditations, right? But I don't like. It's not that I don't like all of them. I have not produced the same feelings with all of his guided meditations for sleep. There are specific ones that he does that I have found they've been tools that have helped me create more profound or deeper feelings in myself than other ones. There's one which, if I'm not mistaken, is the do nothing. It's in his sleep meditations. It's the do nothing one and receive everything, if I'm not mistaken. It's a money related one, and it's just how he asks the questions, because for each one in that meditation, for me, he asks a question, and through me doing my other meditations, what I found was I could take those questions and I could create more profound states. But it actually took me a while. It took me like maybe a couple of weeks, maybe a few months of practicing these different things until I went back to this meditation after that guided meditation, after practicing and using all these other practices like the gateway experience, and I realized that I was now able to use that old meditation guided meditation video to produce more profound states inside of my body. So sometimes it's a matter of you getting better with your skills of focus, with your skills of producing more powerful states in other meditations, and then you can come back and be different in the meditations that you do. Like, the more that I've progressed in all of the different systems that I've used, I've found I've become more effective in all the old things or things that may have not worked as well for me. I've become more effective at those things because now I have more energy and focus and more control over my concentration than I did previously. So I could use things that didn't previously work for me, and now they work very effectively because I've built up the skills I need inside of me, the skills of focus, the skills of breath control, the skills related to energy control and energy manipulation in the body, emotional control, thought control, like having a greater degree of control over my thoughts, or just having more energy available in the body because I recently did a meditation, or the fact that I just got out of a deep meditation, so it's easier for me to go into deeper states. I found that like mixing stuff together at times has produced more profound results. Specifically, the thing that has helped me out a lot more with guided meditations and affirmations is silent meditations, Ho'oponopono or forgiveness exercises to clear out any stuff inside of me, and the gateway experiences. The gateway experiences have probably been one of the most profound ones because it's been a system that I've used for problem solving, for releasing old feelings and traumas, and by letting that stuff go, it was much easier for me to go into deeper states because I didn't have I didn't have the same blocks that I had before. So, am I a person who believes that you are God or God is in everything and everyone? I have a background in Christianity.
but my understanding of Christianity is more closely tied to the occult and mystic explanations for Christianity. But the simplest ones are that, God is within you. That's one of the big ones. Is that God is within you. The thing that I think we disagree on or don't necessarily fully understand, or religious people don't really articulate well, is what the heck is God inside of people? Like, what is that thing? And when you go through the stories in the Bible, if you really pay attention to what they're saying, it's kind of funny because again and again, the public secret that they keep saying is that God is your awareness. That energy, that moving energy, that consciousness, that energy, that intelligence that exists within us, that moving force that moves the worlds, the same force that created the sun and the movement, the sun and the planets, and the causes the planets to continue its movement in orbit, and the gradual unfolding of this massive work of art that we call the universe and all of creation. That energy, that force happens to be God, or the awareness, or consciousness. So that's like my thought process. Like the representation of what God is within us is that force, that energy, that consciousness, that awareness that exists inside of us, and all of us. And with Neville Goddard, Neville always referred to imagination as God within us, and that man is all imagination, the wonderful human imagination. Picture the naked. Yeah. Um, but yeah. That understanding and concept of God, and it's funny because that's literally what's in the Bible. When you have Noah talking to the burning bush, and the burning bush is like, "Yo, you need to go to your boss and ask for PTO for all your people. Tell them to get PTO to all." And he's like, "Whoa, Mister Bush, thank you so much for telling us to go ask for some vacation time. Who should I say sent me?" And the bush looked. Well, the bush looked at him and told him like, "Hey, Eye Asher Eye, Eye Asher Eye. I am that I am." But that isn't the full thing. But I am that I am, which roughly translates to I am that awareness. I am that formless awareness inside of you. But if you go into the actual Hebrew breakdown, the Hebrew is actually I will be that which I create. I am that which I create. I am what I will be. I create what I create. What I created is what I create. So it's an interesting combination of all those things because the words themselves have so many different layers of meaning in them when it was put together. So it's like a layered form of poetry, or like an optical illusion, where depending on which way you look at it, there's new meaning that's imbued in that simple phrase. But that's literally what the bush told the dude. He's like, "Yo, I'm the awareness inside of you." And then when you think about that, that's when all of the like descriptions of God make a lot more sense. Well, if God is supposed to be human awareness, well, then that makes the omnipresence thing make sense, because if a thing exists, then there has to be consciousness there. So that would mean that would explain why God would be omnipresent, because consciousness has to be everywhere, because that's part of presence. To be omnipotent, well, if all consciousness or all knowing is this representation of this thing that we call God, then that would make sense, because if anything was conscious, it would know. It would know. So anything that could be known would have to be known by this massive universal intelligence. And then you have well, that was omnipresence, omnipotence, and all seeing, all knowing, and everywhere. And all seeing. If you're seeing, you have to have consciousness to see. So all that stuff made a lot more sense once I understood that. I was like, oh, okay. And I can understand why it was described in such a way in older religious texts, Because how do you explain omnipotence and omnipotence and omnipresence to a farmer? You have to use language that these people understand and they know. So that's why they used terms that were common symbols and common archetypes that these people could understand. That's why they referred to God as the Father. Why? Because anybody who lived, whether they were a freaking farmer or a shepherd or a merchant or a fisherman, all of them had fathers. So it was very easy for them to understand. And for other religions, when it came to like the divine mother, it makes sense because the people understand how a mother's supposed to act. Even if you didn't have a mother, you've seen mothers and you've interacted with them, so you know how they're supposed to act. You know how a father and mother is supposed to act, so you understand how to relate yourself to the divine. So it was using these symbols to like explain all this stuff. But ultimately, it's to, teach people how to freaking meditate and to gain control over your consciousness, which is used to create the world around you. Whew. So yeah, when you practice all that stuff, it'll be much easier to do guided meditations. I like them. Affirmations, sleep affirmations are really good, but those usually take a little bit of time. You're basically with affirmations and subliminal tapes, you're basically brute forcing changes in your consciousness. Think of it like a signal thing. When you listen to a sound played over and over and over again, you're literally accepting a signal into your brain until it ends up becoming like a song that's stuck in your head. So when you listen to subliminals or affirmations, you're brute forcing the changing of your daily thought process by slipping in new words and new phrases and then repeating them again and again and again and again until they're just like part of your operating system. They become part of your code through repetition. So they work. They just it depends on what state of consciousness you're in when you're listening to it. And that's why it's really good to listen to sleep affirmations and subliminals as you're going to sleep, because you're moving down from alpha and beta, which are like broadcasting signals where you're broadcasting to work and interact with the world. You're moving from those down into theta, which is where you're in a receptive state. Your consciousness is now moving, well, not your consciousness, but your brain waves are moving at a slow enough rate for you to just accept information into you, which is kind of cool. AP, should I reach out to my ex as I'm manifesting them? If you're asking the question, then probably not. No. Is twin flames a real thing, Arjun? I think a lot of spiritual language that people use are meant to describe relationships. And what I mean by that is like how like energy templates or archetypes interact with each other. So when people talk about twin flames, I think it's a representation of like an energy relationship. And it's supposed to be a symbol that's supposed to represent like how those two energy relationships match each other. And the explanation for it may or may not be true, but that's kind of like besides the point. The whole point is when you see a person like this is a particular type of relationship archetype. I think that there are lots of relationship archetypes like twin flames, soulmates, karmic partners, where you have like the clashing together. You just like we have other archetypal relationships with like mother and father, son and daughter, well, like siblings, sister and brother, father and son, the healthy father and son relationship, unhealthy father and son relationship, the abusive father and son relationship, the redeemed father and son relationship. There are so many different archetypes that exist in terms of relationships. I think twin flames just so happen to be a certain type of archetype between romantic partners that just so happen to exist. So that's like my understanding for it. Whether or not the explanation for it of what people think twin flames are, it doesn't necessarily matter whether or not it's true. It's just this happens to be a certain type of relationship that exists. Just like we don't need to explore or understand why or how redemptive father son relationship manifests. It's just there. It's an archetype that exists, and you point it out so you know how to interact when you're in that kind of relationship, so you interact properly. But I think people experience many different types of romantic relationships. Some of them are karmic, and karmic relationships, understanding what kind of relationship that you're experiencing allows you to make decisions on how you're going to interact and to plan how you interact in the future. Like my relationship with my partner, I studied Western astrology and Chinese astrology, and in both those things, we are enemy. We're not. We are enemy signs. There are certain areas where we are compatible, but other areas there are friction. There's friction. So because I understand that, and because I've studied it, I understand how I need to interact with her in terms of energy and how we work and compromise to make sure that our relationship works. Because the nature of a relationship is very fiery and confrontational, and the beauty of that is it allows me to bring up issues and problems that wouldn't come up in a normal, well, not a normal, that wouldn't come up in a different type of relationship dynamic. But because she's like at times, just like in a story, she serves as like an antagonist for me, where there's a certain degree of like tension and conflict that allows me to overcome and to learn more about myself and to expand like my understanding and ability. That's the reason why this channel exists in the first place, was because we had friction in our relationship. If I didn't have that friction, that tension, that pressure in our relationship, I would have never created this channel. I would have never started talking about any of these things. So, any type of relationship, whether it's one that's one for tension and karma, another one that's twin flame relationship with a soulmate relationship, I think it's mostly just so you understand what kind of contract you're getting into with the other person, so that you can plan accordingly and know what you're getting into. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. Just make decisions. Is this actually what you want in your relationship? If it's not, then make your decision. If it is, then great, buckle up and prepare and make sure that you make concessions and have really good open communication with you and your partner. If it's true, then the public speaking advice, a picture of them naked would make our anxiety worse. AP, you don't have to delete your question, dude. It's fine. I appreciate you asking it, man. No, never feel the need to delete a question or anything like that, man. It's good. It's good that you are asking and expressing your thoughts and concerns, because you do want this person back. I'll say it like this: if you receive the urge, like a positive urge to talk to this person, then go with that. You should go with urges and hunches. But if you just feel like an uncertainty or and that this has to do with like intuition, you have to understand what feelings are going on inside your body. If you feel like you need to reach out to them because of uncertainty or anxiety or any of that stuff, don't do it. If you're reaching out to them because you feel a genuine love and joy and a warmth and just that like compulsion where it's like, I want to talk to you, think it's going to be amazing, then go with it. But this is something that you have to like be really in tune with your emotions and your feelings, and practice using your intuition for that process. If you're working on manifesting somebody, usually you want to just work on yourself and naturally make yourself a better person, so that you're naturally attracting that ideal type of relationship, and then you'll attract the attention or the connection with that person. As a matter of fact, that stuff happens. I had an ex that I hadn't seen in years, literally dropped off the face of the planet, either blocked me or like She just deleted all of her social media profiles. I think it was that she deleted all the social media profiles. Completely just disappeared. Couldn't find her anywhere. And I remember like a while back, I was like, I wonder how she's doing. I would love to, see her or talk to her. She showed up last week. Was literally walking through Disney Springs, walking, and guess who pops up out of the corner of my? I was walking to go up to the at Disney Springs, which is like Disney's open air mall that you can go to. That's the extension of downtown Disney. They have a huge Coca-Cola building. It's like a 3-story glass building with exposed brick. It looks beautiful and gorgeous. And at the very top of this building is a rooftop Coke bar. And I was gonna go take a client call at this rooftop Coke bar, and we walk. Me, Stephanie, and the baby. We walk into the building so they could drop me off so I could get set up for this meeting. And as I'm walking in, I see this familiar face out of the corner of my vision. I'm like, oh my God, oh, it's there. And sure enough, I'm walking to the elevator to get upstairs because this call is supposed to happen like in 2 minutes. And then she starts walking by and I'm like, hi. And she's like, oh, fuck. I'm like, yeah, hi, how you doing? Hey, this is Stephanie, this is my partner, and this is our baby Sophia. And then she's like, oh yeah, this is my daughter Isabella. And I'm like, oh yeah. And we talk for a minute, and I'm like, hey, I have to go. I tell her what I gotta do, which sounds like the most awful excuse, and most awful made up excuse in the world. Where I'm like, oh, I gotta go upstairs for a meeting. Which I had to, but it sounded so weird. It's like, who's gonna have a meeting at Disney Springs? Me. That's who. So I had to say goodbye, and I went up and I had my meeting, and it was awesome. It was wonderful. But that's what happens when you broadcast that out and you leave yourself open. People will literally show up out of nowhere. We bumped into each other 300 miles away from where we used to live. Same day, same time, and usually I if I would have done what I did the day before, I wouldn't have caught her. That wouldn't have happened because I usually would walk up the ramp to the rooftop bar, which was in the Coke building. The entire building is surrounded by these big glass windows, these huge, enormous glass windows, and they have a ramp which moves up and snakes around the outer edge of the building that you use to walk up to the third floor bar. And if I would have done that, I wouldn't have seen her at all because she was literally right by the elevator. So because I was going in with Stephanie and the baby, and she asked me, hey, do you want us to go with you? Which was the only reason why I decided to go to the elevator, because she asked me that and I said yes. We walked together to the elevator, and because we walked to the elevator through the first floor, we just so happened to bump into each other at that given time. So when you're vibrating right, the person will show up in spite of all the odds. It'll happen. And it's more wild than anything that you could ever imagine, to be honest. Ugh. Oof, my legs. Ugh. Oof, 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 oof. How do I self-assess my mistakes and my techniques of manifestation? After months of performing sats and affirmations and not seeing any change in 3D, I am forced to doubt myself. Well, number one is newbie is to practice sats on something else. The best way to, and this has to do with meditation as well. You want to keep a journal, number one. So whenever you have desires or things that are coming up that you're going to do impressions for, keep a journal so that you're writing this down and you're keeping a record. You want to keep a record of things that are at this point a thought or an idea or a desire, which is why it's good to keep desire list of all the things that you want, to keep manifestation journals or meditation journals, so that you're bringing this stuff. Yeah. You keep this stuff all together. Yeah, sorry, I screwed too loud. You keep all this stuff together, and you keep note and check off when things manifest in your experience. So the way that you test whether or not you're doing things right is what's showing up. And if you have a certain thing that might come with like a lot of doubt or anything like that, you want to also spend some time working on other things that might be a little bit simpler and a little bit easier. And that way you keep a connection and keep a record of cause and effect, where you know for a fact at one point you only had this thing as a thought or as a desire, and now this is in your physical experience. So because you have a record of cause and effect where you did the act and then you had the effect, it allows you to build your belief where you no longer have as much doubt because you're building a list of evidence of how this stuff works. Like for instance, this right here. This bag. This bag is a saddleback leather bag. I remember being in high school when I first learned about the company Saddleback Leather. And I have in my desire list Saddleback Leather bag. It's a couple $100. I think it was like what? I forgot how much it was. Maybe like 600, 700, 800 bucks. I wanted this bag, but at the time I wanted and desired it, I didn't have the money for it. I was in high school, and I purchased the bag after I crossed my first $100,000. It was my big milestone. When I made my first $100,000 with my business, I got the bag. No. It wasn't my first $100,000. I think I got it after I crossed my first $10,000 month. It was either $100,000 or my first. No. It was my first. I got it for my first $10,000 month. That's what I got it for. And that was a wonderful, amazing time. And now it's something that's in my experience. I remember when I was just looking at the page, imagining what it would be like to have the bag. And I have lists of all of these things that at one point I desired that are now in my experience. The DJI mics. I've wanted these bad boys for the longest time. I've been seeing so many people with the videos where they're like, oh, hey, yeah, you know, DJI mic, or they put it on here, or they put it on their beard and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, I'd love to want one of those. Well, guess what? I wrote it down on my list, and looky here, look at what I got. So every time something that I desire comes into my experience, it becomes much easier. And I tell my clients to do this too. Once you write it down and you have it come into your experience, it's much easier for you to believe that this stuff works, because you quite literally have a laundry list of things that showed up in your experience. So it stops you from having doubt, because doubt is usually just the fact that you do the process and you look to see the result, but the world around you is the result of older thoughts and older patterns that you've built. So then you don't make the connection between cause and effect, and you believe that your seed or your act didn't work, when in actuality it did, and it is working. It just may be taking time to replace old things that you created with something new, because whatever's happening in your experience at some point had to pass through somebody's consciousness, whether it was yours or somebody else's, but it had to pass through consciousness to get here. So whenever you look at your 3D experience, because everybody's like, oh, I look at the 3D and I look for change, it's like, well, you're looking at old things that you created, and the more you look at things that haven't changed, the more you keep those things the way that they are. So don't do that. Spend time looking in your consciousness at what you desire, imagine it, appreciate the other things that you already wanted that have been manifesting, and then just focus on other things in your experience. Don't spend time trying to look for the changes, just wait for them to show up. It's kind of like sitting there and watching a paint dry or something download on your computer back in like the early 2000s. When you're sitting there watching it load, you're like, waiting for it to download. Yes, you can stare at it and wait for it to download and feel like, oh my gosh, it's like this thing isn't even moving at all. Or you can go do something else while it downloads and then come back and then realize, oh wait, hey, it's the download's finished. I could just watch this movie or I could listen to this song now. Oh, this is wonderful. This is great. Just do that. Make your life easier. Don't make it more difficult than it has to be. That's my looking at stuff. So if you're ever trying to do sats or affirmations or anything, if you're doing something that's too big, focus on something a little bit smaller. Build up the strength of your belief by manifesting other things, and then make your life easier. Well, build up your manifestation belief in other things, and then progressively use it to move to bigger and bigger things. That's why Neville Goddard started off with telling people to climb a ladder, because it was a smaller thing that people could manifest, and because people did it and they created it, they were able to create bigger and bigger things. Because once they did something small, like climbing a ladder, they made it in their consciousness and they realized, oh wait, my imagination does create reality. So it's not like somebody was telling them that. They got the invitation to do the process. They did the process. They imagined in the state akin to sleep. As they fell asleep, they imagined for 3 nights, and then they would go and climb the ladder, regardless of whether they said that they weren't going to climb the ladder at all. And that experience served as the belief builder. So if you're trying to use sats, the state akin to sleep, to create an experience, do something smaller, do something easier, so that you build your belief and understand that this works, and then begin applying it into things that progressively get bigger and bigger for yourself. But don't try to do something super large. If you've never made $10,000, please, oh please, do not try to manifest $1 million, because it's something that it's such a big gap between where you are and what you're trying to create, that you will constantly just look at your experience and be like, oh no, it doesn't work. It's like, no, it's not that it doesn't work. It's that you haven't built the foundation to believe that you can do that. But if you build a foundation and you start selling, let's say, a digital product, and you sell your first digital product and you make your first $100, then it's much easier for you to believe that you can make $1,000. Because if you made one sale at $100, it's easy for you to do that another 9 times. You get your first $1,000, and it's like, okay, I made my first 1,000. If I made my first 1,000, can I scale this up to my first 3,000, my first 10,000? Then you get your first 10,000, and it's like, oh, let me start scaling and thinking about, if I was able to do 10,000, then I have the belief where I think I can scale this up to 20, and then you just can progressively build it up. If I'm making 20,000 a month, then it's easy for me to believe that I can take some of this capital and maybe start investing it here and here, or invest in my skills, so I can understand and imagine how I can make 30,000 next month, or 40,000, or 100,000. Then you get to 100,000, and you go over the course of a year, you repeat that process, then you're over $1 million a year. You're at 1.2 million a year. But you build your way up to it, just like you build your way up at the gym. You don't start off with 300 pounds on the squat rack. You build yourself up to that. When I first started lifting weights, I was not lifting 300 pounds on the squat rack when I first started, but I was able to get myself to over 300 pounds. I think I got to like maybe 325, 330 on my squat. Might have been more than that. I think it was like anywhere between 330 and 350. But I increased my squat because I built up over time. I was making realistic jumps. I was doing it to the level of my belief. My body was a certain level of strength, so I could do 250, I could do 275, I could do 300, I could do 315. And each time I went back into the gym, I just increased the weight just a bit, and just increased it, and continued increasing it as I went back and did the exercise again. And each time I was able to like expand my belief, because I understood, and my body moved into the place where I could support the belief that I could do it. So I could push myself just a little bit more. How do I ask for a sign to the universe to my manifestation has been accepted and indeed come to fruition? Just ask. the end of your meditation, just ask. One of the things I do in guided meditations with people who book one-to-one sessions with me is we'll do any of our exercises and have like a profound change. And I got this from Dr. Joe Dispenza's meditations, where you essentially say, if I've created from this moment and truly generated abundance or love or whatever the experience is, whatever the emotional component of this experience, if I've created passion, if I've created love, if I've created attraction, let me be worthy and ask for a sign that comes in a miraculous way that lets me know that I've created from this moment, and let it give me inspiration to create again and again and again, and let it come in a way that comes without a shadow of a doubt. Something along those lines. You essentially just ask that. Just say that. And when you say that and ask it and let it out, you will be surprised at what shows up in your experience. Pleasantly surprised. Quite pleasantly surprised. To say the least. If you guys have any other questions on like tips for meditation, please let me know, because this is a meditation focused live stream. We're talking meditation. Oh, super big tip. So the other ones I mentioned earlier was number one, make sure that your beliefs are in alignment with like what you're doing with meditation. You're moving into silence, stillness, and darkness so that you have the ability to create. Because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to feel a certain way. We want to think a certain way. We want to act a certain way in the world. And we want to interact in a certain way. We want to interact with people in a different way. We want to make sure that we have greater control over our thoughts, our images, and our emotions. And to get to that point, we don't do it by just brute forcing it. We need to move to the opposite. It's kind of like if you want to rearrange a space in your house, you first need to clean up the house. If your house is a total mess and you try to organize stuff, you're going to have clutter and mess in the way. So the first thing you need to do is clean things out. So that's what we're doing in consciousness when you're doing a meditation. You're cleaning things out. Or let's say if you're making a painting or starting a work of art, you clean up your studio space, you clean off the desk, you get a clean canvas, and then from that clean canvas, that's where you begin to sketch and create. So the act of meditation is giving you a clean canvas that you can use to create whatever you want in your life. Whether that's a certain emotional state, whether that's a certain new mindset or a new set of actions. By giving yourself the space to meditate, you now have the ability in the blank canvas to make your new impression on your life. So that's why I really do suggest it for everybody to go out and do that. Seriously. Do meditation to wipe the canvas and the slate clean. Meditation at its core is focusing on the breath and manipulating the breath, so you slow down the breath and get control over one portion of your consciousness. This may be the focus of your attention, your breath, the self-talk in your head, or your emotional, physical state. You're getting in control of something and you're guiding it in a certain direction. That's why walking meditations work. That's why sitting down, breathing meditations work. That's why mantra meditations work, because you're using your consciousness and you are like breaking a horse. You are holding it and you are focusing it on something. It doesn't matter what you're focusing it on. You're just focusing it and bringing it back to something. A mantra, your breath in silence, or the physical movement of the body, the step that you make as you walk, whatever that happens to be. Just focus on one of those things. Doesn't matter which one it is, just focus on one of them so that you're able to get yourself into an altered state of consciousness, which is what you're doing with meditation. The third tip, and the one I wanted to talk about, was timing. The time of day will actually affect how deep your meditations are. It sounds crazy when I talk to people and I'm like, yeah, I got my meditations up to like 3-4 hours in a day, until I mentioned what time I was doing it at. Because it's like, how are you able to meditate that long? Like, what about like, working or like other people or other sounds and all and light and all that stuff? It's like, None of that matters. None of that comes up. Why? Because when I did my meditation, I meditated earlier yesterday, because now it's today. Yesterday, I meditated between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. There are a bunch of different spiritual practices that go into the reasons why the time between 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. is the most powerful time for you to meditate. 3 a.m. is known as the witching hour. It's the time where the the barrier between the waking and sleeping world is the thinnest. Super powerful. You meditating between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., there are a couple of things that are a fact. Number one, it is dark as hell, which means that you do not have light being produced by the world outside. So it's much easier for people to experience darkness. All you got to do is turn off your lights, make sure that your electronics are away, and any like plugs in the walls are like covered up so that you just experience darkness. Or you could put eye mask on. Darkness is socially acceptable between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. So you can experience total darkness, which is great because you need darkness to experience really deep meditation. It makes it so much easier. Darkness, number one, at 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Number two, silence. Everybody is asleep between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. Late, night owls, they've been up, but they're usually going to sleep around that time. They're going to be crashing at a certain point, and that's usually at that time. 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., some of the earlier risers are usually asleep during that time too. So in that sweet spot, that sweet period, that's the period of silence and quiet. People are not awake. It's not socially acceptable to really message people around that time. So nobody's going to expect anything from you. They're not going to expect emails. They're not going to expect text messages back unless somebody's an emergency, which usually doesn't happen. But you get all that time to yourself. It's 100% personal. It's 100% you. So you can experience true silence. You will not hear animals. You will not hear people. You will usually not hear cars. So you can experience true silence. It's beautiful. And also the fact that nobody's watching TV or listening to audios or movies or music and any of this stuff. So silence is happening in the world. It's a beautiful thing. So you have darkness, you have silence, and because it's nighttime and you could just be in whatever space, you could sit down in a chair, you could sit down on a couch, you could lay down on a bed, in bed, or go to another room. You can experience stillness. Because it's dark, because everybody's asleep, you could just sit there. Nobody's going to come touch you. Nobody's going to come talk to you. Nobody's going to ask you to do things. You could just be. So it's much easier to experience stillness. So if you're practicing meditation and you want to go deeper into meditation, practice it between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. If you are like, oh man, that's super early or super late, go to bed. Go to bed earlier. Go to bed at like 9. If you need to. Oh, the other thing is that you don't have to stay up immediately afterwards. If you get up between like the hours of like 3 a.m. and 6 a.m., you can maybe meditate for like 30 minutes or like an hour, and then at 4 a.m. go back to sleep. And that's biphasic sleep. That's perfectly normal. That's great. So you could practice it, use it, and build up and practice. I'm not saying to stay up that entire time. You just get up during that period, and then you can go back to sleep. Which is what I do, honestly. I'll stay up. I'll not stay up. I'll go to sleep. I'll do the meditations at that time, and then I'll go back to sleep afterwards. Yes, newbie. The SATS is a state of meditation. That's what Neville Goddard ultimately taught people. And you got to remember the time period. People were not used to the terms of like meditation. They weren't used to yoga or a lot of Eastern philosophy and a lot of Eastern teachings. These things weren't as widespread at that time. Those things started gaining a lot more popularity in the West and in America as we moved into like the 60s and the 70s with like the hippie movements and more of these speakers from the East coming over to America and having this wave of spirituality move across the country. But prior to that time, Neville Goddard was doing these speeches in like the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s. So he used terminology that the predominantly Christian population in California and New York would understand. So that's why Neville Goddard referred to this as the state akin to sleep, because the existing thing that people would understand at that time were the Bible quotes about taking your orders and sealing them in sleep. And what he found was by taking the act, using the imagination as one is going into sleep, you are taking that feeling and giving it to, God. You're giving it to imagination. You're giving it to the subconscious mind. And the way that he described it was easy for people to do, especially during that time in like the 30s, 40s, and 50s, because it's not like people were watching TV during that time. And that's another thing that I don't think anybody really discusses is like the facts that were happening around when Neville Goddard was teaching this. TV turned off. Like TV stopped at a certain time. Like at a certain time at night, they would have like the American flag that would flap, and then it was off, like just static. So people would turn off their TVs. So entertainment wasn't 24/7. 24/7 entertainment was something that came way later on. I think that 24/7 television might have happened and started around like the 80s or the 90s, where they had the 24/7 news cycle and the 24/7 television cycle. But before that, that wasn't the case. So people were not consuming content and media all the time. They had regular bedtime, so people were not as they weren't as big night owls. People went to sleep and had no issues with sleeping. They also had much fewer like chemicals and problems. They weren't full of microplastics and a whole bunch of other issues. So and then of course they didn't have social media, so their attention spans were longer. So when Neville Goddard referred to the state akin to sleep, it was much easier for people to do back then. Because they're like, oh yeah, what else am I gonna do? Read a book with my wife? Sip on a cup of tea? Listen to the radio before the TV turns off? Yeah, you would have no problem. And then furniture was super comfortable, and people had like really nice homes. So you would lay down, relax the body, and move into the what he referred to as the state akin to sleep. I like referring to all the other scientific terms around it, like hypnagogia and the theta brainwave state, because then it gives people those two words unlock an entire world where people who have a more scientific mind can now go out and understand and study and research this. Because the theta brainwave state is where you're in the space right between wakefulness and sleep. And then you understand that to get to there, you have to have a certain level of physical stillness where you begin the process of feeling like sleep paralysis in the body. So the state akin to sleep is hypnagogia. It's that space as the mind is now moving between fully solid physical reality and sleep. So it's like where you're looking at things and like your thoughts are like, it's kind of funny, when you have those prank videos where somebody like prank somebody by waking them up and making them do something crazy, and then they're like, wait, what? That's because they're in the state of theta. Their mind is just accepting whatever's given to them. They're like, hey, here's the phone, and they hand them a banana, and they're like, hello mom. It's because their brain is still moving from delta into theta and up from theta into alpha, where they can like have conscious not conscious interaction, but like conscious intervention, where their mind is not accepting everything and they're being skeptical. But if you're in the state of theta, you're just going to accept whatever is impressed in the mind. So if somebody hands you a banana and says your mom's on the phone, you're going to pick it up and act like it's a phone, which is pretty cool. Yeah. How do you manifest a relate? And that's why meditation is powerful, because you learn how to harness the power of states like theta and the state akin to sleep. How do you manifest a relationship with a girl who you met a week ago and she gave you her number? She likes me, but IDK if the relationship is gonna happen. Uh, write down the things that you desire in your ideal relationship. That's the number one thing. If you feel as though that this girl is a, and this is a big thing, if you feel as though that this girl may be a potential good candidate as a long-term partner, and you are interested in exploring what that would be like with her, you owe it to both yourself and to her to write down and get really clear on what it is that you actually want. Like, what do you want in your relationship? So, do you want passion? What kind of communication do you want? What kind of intimacy do you want? What are your goals? What are your long-term goals? What kind of ideal relationship do you want within like the next 2 years to 3 years? Like, what are your life goals? What are shared goals that you two want to have? What are your values? What do you care about? Start articulating all this stuff. Start writing it all down so that when you think about and do any of these processes like SATs and state akin to sleep, you understand what elements you want to add in and what you want to focus on. Because right now, there's this girl that you are interested in that you have a set of attraction with. This doesn't necessarily mean that she is a full reflection of what you truly want and you truly desire. She just is a reflection of part of what you want, and you may be interested in exploring it more. If you take the time to really articulate and write down all the things that you desire, you may have a conversation with this girl and quickly realize that she's not the one for you. I remember Tai Lopez made a video where he talked about talking to a girl about like future dreams. And for her dream was like, oh, I want a normal little life, a house with a white picket fence, and 2 dogs and all this stuff, and it would be super nice and wonderful, and I'd love just a simple life like that. And that was her dream. That was what she wanted. For Ty, that was a nightmare because he didn't want to have a normal life. He didn't want to have an average life. That would have been hell for him. But that was her dream. And through communicating, he quickly realized that, hey, this girl's wonderful, this girl's amazing, but our dreams are fundamentally incompatible. So for us to be happy, if we were to progress like this, one of us would have to compromise what our dreams are. And that's not fair for either person. So that's why I think it's super important for people who want to manifest somebody or to manifest a specific person, really articulate what is it that you truly want, and then you will realize your ideal person, whether that is that SP or someone else, because you have now articulated what it is that you actually want in clear enough detail that you can actually pick out that person when they show up. And when you communicate with somebody, that person, if they're not a good fit, they'll basically be like, oh yeah, no, that's not for me. Or they'll be like, oh my God, where have you been all my life? That's exactly what I want. Oh my gosh, you're wonderful, you're amazing. So if you want to articulate, if you want to attract a specific person, go a little bit further and use them and all the other specific persons that you've had in your life as an example for you to build the template of your ideal relationship. That's what I believe that people should do, because it makes your life a lot easier and saves you and the other person from heartbreak and any difficulty. Because the moment that you guys get intimate, it's going to be painful to do the disconnection. It's a painful, painful process. So the last thing you want to do is to get emotionally and spiritually tethered and connected to somebody who just so happens to not have the same dream as you. And they're wonderful and amazing, and then you just realize that, yeah, it's not a good fit. You don't want that to happen. So to save you from that, write down what you want and then be willing and okay with being like, you know what, that's not my person. Okay. Which means that my person is out there, and I am so excited to finally meet them. And with mine, it wasn't so much about fighting. Mine is like with her, I know and I am fully aware that me and her have a karmic relationship, which means that our relationship is a fiery one where we have
friction between the two of us. And it's not even like a fighting thing. It's more like when we are our natural, authentic selves, there are things about us that would create friction between the other one. And this is like it's not even people call it a personality thing, but it's like an energy template thing where like I'm I'm a 3 life path, but I'm also a rooster, which means that I'm very attached to communication. The throat chakra is a very defined thing for me, so I speak with a lot of passion. I speak very loudly. Because I'm supposed to be on stage. I'm supposed to talk to large groups of people. This is like my natural state. I feel happy and joyful when I do this kind of work. I could do it for hours. It's almost been about 2 hours, and I feel more energized than I did when I first started this process. And that's just naturally what works really well for me. But for her, she is a rabbit in the Chinese zodiac. So she is more soft and gentle and fragile, like emotionally. So as a rooster, one of the things that I have a tendency to do, because just how my energy works, is that I'm blunt, I'm to the point. So naturally, when I speak, the way that I'm supposed to speak to communicate to people, I'm supposed to be to the point, like hard hitting, to hit people in the emotions. So I will have the tendency to be very blunt because that's how people are supposed to learn. That's how I'm supposed to do stuff. I move with that kind of speed and intensity when I speak, and I'll have that energy and passion. But if I do that to her, that may end up hurting her. So with that, I understand that now because we've been together for such a long time that I'm conscious of it, and if I feel like the compulsion to do it, I'll like pull back. Cause I'm like, okay, I understand. I'm not supposed to do this, or I'll alleviate things afterwards. But naturally, that's just how I am. That's how I'm like wired. So missing them a lot. That just means that see, this is part of the reason why I'm telling people to like stay away from others, because ultimately it's usually not that we truly want to be with a person. Usually it's just that we are addicted. And this is me being raw to rooster. Do ask yourself the question, like seriously, do you actually want to be with this person, or are you just addicted to feeling another human being? Are you scared of being alone? Are you experiencing withdrawals from having the dopamine and the serotonin of having another human being hold you? Are you fearful of another person not finding you attractive and having to stay in this state of being lonely, of not being touched, of not being held, of not being desired? Is that what you truly miss? You gotta understand, what do you mean by you miss them? Because when people say that I miss them, what we usually say is what it really means is I'm having withdrawals from the feeling, the good feeling emotions, the drug of touching this person or having this person touch me, which is a physical thing, like how they physically impinge on your senses. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this person is the best fit for you long term. Because there are times where you get physically involved with somebody, you touch them, you guys get intimate, your bodies are quite literally like tuned into each other. And when you do that, it's very tough to make actual logical decisions about whether or not that this is a good relationship or a good pairing. So the emotional connection. Just because you had an emotional connection with him doesn't mean that does that mean that you would never have an emotional connection like that with somebody else? This is the interesting thing that happens to the brain. The brain is holographic or reflective, which means just like a computer. the information that it contains can only be what it's downloaded before. So like the only way that we can imagine something is if it's actually been experienced in some way, shape, or form by the senses. So, like for instance, if I told you to imagine a color that you've never seen before, you can't do it, or you'll struggle to do it. All right, there we go. You'll struggle to do it. Same thing with trying to imagine a flavor of a fruit that you've never tried before. You can't experience it. The only way that we can get close to experiencing it is by connecting it to something that you've seen before. So by saying like you can have an emotional connection like this with somebody else, for most people, the only person that they could bring up in their experience is like a food that they've tried before. When in actuality you can feel that again with somebody else. And our goal, like I mentioned, is to really narrow down what are all the things that you want in your long-term relationship, a life partner. Write all those things down, because a lot of the time the person that you were with may have not been a reflection of all of the most important things. It's just that this person hit most of the things that I wanted, and I enjoyed it, so I want to, I want to experience this and this other stuff. Because otherwise, it's usually, oh, I love all this stuff about this person, but I would want all this stuff to change. Well, it's like they taught you about your preferences. Say thank you for them to teach you about your preferences, and do not require them to be the person that has to change. Write your preferences and the things that you appreciated from your relationship with this person, and then, and then, and then open yourself up to feel and experience that in your consciousness, in your imagination, through meditation. And then ultimately you'll end up attracting that kind of relationship, whatever the whole version of the relationship is. If you, Zizi, if you want more if you want more in-depth reading, I have to know more about like what's going on with your relationship. So if you want, you can book a session with me, and then we can go in depth and like talk all about it. Because like usually if I try to talk about this, I'm usually just doing it based on like what I know and what you've mentioned. And it's much easier if we're just like in a private setting where I can ask you questions and you could be a little bit more open about what's been going on, so I can give you more in-depth, like a more in-depth walkthrough. Because depending on what they said and what happened in the relationship, there's a lot of context that I'm probably not getting in the conversation, so we could just talk about it there. Yeah, I'm about to call it a night too, Rinsler. But yeah, those are like my three big things for moving in depth into through meditation. Focusing in on the breath, getting yourself into the states of stillness, silence, and darkness, making this a consistent practice where you're doing it, consistent practice, just like any other martial arts, just like cooking or playing an instrument. You practice it to get better at it and to expand your skills. Do not expect to be a virtuoso from the first time you do it. You can sound a little bad. You can build your way up. You can sing. You could play hot cross buns, and build your way up to getting better. How do I manifest good grades? Don't wait till last minute to do the manifestation stuff. That's one thing that helps out a lot. I like Abraham Hicks's analogy of like somebody jumping out of a plane without a parachute and saying like, "Hey, how do I stick the landing?" And it's like, "Well, hold on tight. It'll be over very soon, and then we could work on healing afterwards." But if you're at like this moment and you still got to do a whole bunch of stuff, it's a lot to go over. If you want help with trying to build your confidence for the thing tomorrow, you imagine the end state, which might be you receiving your grade and being joyful. Like, how joyful are you when you receive the grade from your final back, and you're excited, you know, sharing it with your friends or something like that. That helps out a lot. So go to the wish fulfilled. Imagine the wish fulfilled, which it would be good grades, and then whatever happens with this final, don't stop there. Continue the process afterwards, because the more that you imagine your end state, which is having all of your good grades and having the good GPA, you'll notice that your grades will improve over time. Um, Regardless of what happens at your final tomorrow, if you begin doing that as a practice, you'll notice that your stuff is just gonna, you know, perform better. You'll feel better, and you know, stuff will work better. So yeah. Um, so yeah, make it a consistent practice. Whether you're doing it for your grades, you're doing it for relationships, or anything else like that. Um, you want to make sure that you're being consistent at the practice so that you get better at it. And if you want like a really big hack to get good at it, begin the process of testing your meditations between the hours of 3 a.m. and 6 a.m. If you start doing those things, like you go deeper into those feelings and those experiences, you allow your mind to wander, but then bring it back to whatever you're focusing on, whether it's a mantra or your breath or a sound like the AC or a fountain. You just bring yourself back to it again and again, and allow yourself to gradually get better and better at focusing. If you do that, and don't think of it as a binary, but think of it as a progression where you get better over time, you will notice that you get deeper meditations. You will find more peace, more joy, less anxiety, which is ultimately what I want everybody who follows the channel or joins the stuff to be about. So if you guys want to check out any other videos on, you know, manifesting your ideal relationships and self-improvement, I'm going to be making more videos, but you can check out more videos in the channel and subscribe. So if you haven't, check it out. Check out some of the videos. I'm going to go rest and relax. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you guys for tuning in. See you.